They always talk about Russia. They never talk about China. You know, it's very interesting. It's always Russia. I heard it starting again. They said somebody spoke to Russia 2 years ago. Russia, Russia, Russia.
I do believe that there will be foreign interference in the 2020 election and that Russia will be at the front of the line.
Disagreements and deflections over foreign interference as both campaigns enter the final stretch. Hello, I'm Ghida Fakhry. Welcome to the program. With less than 50 days until the November election, U.S. intelligence is warning of an expanded campaign by foreign states to influence the vote. While President Trump continues to downplay U.S. intelligence reports on Russia's hand in the 2016 election, the White House is now accused of suppressing intelligence reports on Moscow's alleged interference efforts and directing the Department of Homeland Security to focus attention on alleged Chinese and Iranian efforts to influence the election. According to a whistleblower complaint released by the House Intelligence Committee last week, the former Chief of Intelligence and Analysis at the DHS, Brian Murphy, alleges that the acting Secretary of Homeland Security, Chad Wolf, told him that an intelligence notification on Russia should be, quote, held because it made the president look bad, unquote. Murphy accused the department of putting the actions of Russia on par with those of Iran and China in, quote, a manner that is misleading and inconsistent with the actual intelligence data. He said the directive came from National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien, who told him to stop producing intelligence assessments on Russian interference and shift the focus instead to China and Iran.
There's always going to be propaganda. There's always going to be efforts to influence us. And again, we know that the Chinese have taken the most active role, but the Russians and the Iranians and other countries are involved as well. So we're going to keep monitoring it, and we're going to do everything we can to protect the sanctity of our election. That's the foundation of our democracy. That's what makes us America.
So are Beijing and Tehran a bigger threat to the integrity of the U.S. elections than Moscow? Or is the Trump administration politicizing the intelligence to suit its political interests? Joining me now is Mark Zaid, attorney for Brian Murphy, the former DHS official who filed the whistleblower complaint. Mark Zaid, the Department of Homeland Security, the DHS, usually plays a critical role in safeguarding the elections from outside interference. It actually works with local and state officials to ensure that electronic voting systems are protected from hacking and manipulation. Your client, Brian Murphy, came forward and put a whistleblower complaint about his senior bosses at DHS. How consequential was the information that he brought forward when he was told to stand down on Russian interference and decided to actually come out and raise the alarm?
Well, it is very significant allegations. It's unfortunate, somewhat similar to what we have certainly seen over the last 3 to 4 years. And it primarily pertains to whether or not DHS is catering to what President Trump wants as his views rather than what the intelligence analysis actually states.
But why didn't he file a complaint earlier, though, if the information was so consequential? Because according to the whistleblower complaint, quote, in mid-May 2020, Mr. Wolf instructed Mr. Murphy to cease providing intelligence assessments on the threat of Russian interference in the United States and instead start reporting on interference activities by China and Iran. Why not come out earlier and file a complaint?
Sure. Well, understand Mr. Murphy, who was the acting undersecretary for intelligence at DHS, the top intelligence official at DHS, is probably the highest ranking whistleblower that we have seen in our living memory, quite frankly. Most whistleblowers of this rank do not just simply, step out against their bosses and the administration. What they try to do is work through the system and change views and do what he did, which is to say, no, I'm not going to do that. Actually, as a matter of fact, Mr. Murphy filed 2 anonymous inspector general complaints back in 2018, 2019 that apparently went nowhere about some of these issues. And in this current complaint, he took responsibility and recognition that he was the individual who filed those complaints.
But how much was he able to work within the system, though, to change things? Because the complaint also alleges that, quote, Mr. Wolf stated to Mr. Murphy The intelligence notification should be held because it made the president look bad. Mr. Murphy objected, stating that it was improper to hold a vetted intelligence product for reasons of political embarrassment. Why did Mr. Murphy believe that it would cause the president political embarrassment?
Well, I don't know if it was necessarily Mr. Murphy. That was what Mr. Wolf, who's the nominee to be Secretary of DHS, the acting secretary illegally, according to some federal judges, had said that to be the case. And obviously, Mr. Murphy was not successful in persuading his direct boss, who is the acting secretary of DHS, that they should not follow that path, which is why he has taken this on his own and accepted responsibility on his own shoulders to come forward publicly at great risk to himself with respect to his career and his future, certainly in this administration, and who knows, maybe others.
Do you expect to see retaliation? You say whistleblowers are needed now more than ever, but do you think there will be retaliation against him?
Probably. I'm sad to say that is just generally the course. Already, our efforts to gain access to certain classified information that he is authorized to receive to be able to see if we could provide that to Congress has been blocked. He is scheduled to testify on September 21st. We don't know if that will happen. We are still trying to get classified access for us, the lawyers, to be able to represent him. It is unfortunately common that retaliation does occur, but we are trying to work through the lawful system. We are not going rogue. We are doing everything proper, and we hope that DHS and this administration will do the same and recognize and protect Mr. Murphy's whistleblower rights.
What more do you expect him to reveal when he does, if he does, testify before the House Intelligence Committee on the 21st?
I think he's going to reveal a lot. In fact, right, if you read through the complaint, there are more than half a dozen instances where he identifies that information pertaining to the topic is classified and can't be presented in this document. I don't know it because I have not yet been authorized to receive classified information in his case, and it would be illegal for him to share it with me. So we're as much in the dark as everyone else, including the Congress, as to what the substantive facts are in this case. And that's why Congress needs to play its appropriate oversight role to find out where the ground truth actually is.
But as you know, DHS has denied Mr. Murphy's account, so has the White House. He was, until last month, acting DHS undersecretary, as you say, overseeing intelligence. He's also a former FBI special agent. The administration, though, says he was a disgruntled employee who was upset over his demotion. Will that affect his credibility?
I don't think so. I mean, look, this is typical in a whistleblower case. The person's always a disgruntled employee. That's the common tactic. I wish agencies and governments would come up with something new to be able to articulate. We are very confident on what the facts are. And what the facts will be. And you know what? Look, sometimes whistleblowers are wrong. I have no way of knowing in this case what the ground truth is because, again, I haven't seen the classified information. But Mr. Murphy has a reasonable, good faith belief as to what he has asserted, and he wants to bring that information to the Inspector General's offices as well as the Congress for proper oversight. And at the end of the day, those investigative bodies will determine what is fact and what is fiction. And we have had numerous instances over the years where we have represented whistleblowers and their accounts have proven to be true. And sometimes they're not. We'll see in this case which is correct.
Mark Zaid, attorney for Brian Murphy, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Meanwhile, the U.S. Treasury Department placed sanctions on a member of the Ukrainian parliament whom it described as an active Russian agent for waging a covert influence campaign to discredit U.S. presidential candidate Joe Biden. 3 other Russia-linked operatives were sanctioned for attempting to influence the electoral process in the U.S. I'm now joined by Evelyn Farkas, former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Russia, Ukraine and Eurasia in the Obama administration. Evelyn Farkas, some of the key accusations in the recent whistleblower complaint was that White House and DHS leaders suppressed and downplayed intelligence on Russian interference, and that senior DHS officials tried to bend the intelligence to fit Trump's narrative. You worked in the US government for many years. Just how credible are these accusations?
Well, they're very credible, Gita. I mean, we have a whistleblower who was a senior official in the Department of Homeland Security who's making some of the latest accusations. In addition to that, of course, the members of Congress themselves have verified that the Director of National Intelligence told them he wasn't going to be giving any more in person briefings on the interference. So there's no reason to doubt that this administration is actually trying to squelch what Congress and the American people need to know about Russian interference in our elections.
And the American people seem to be increasingly concerned about this trend because, according to a recent survey, 75% of Americans say that it is likely that Russia or other foreign governments will attempt to influence the November elections. And 44% of Americans actually say that it is very likely to happen. So clearly there's growing concerns as we near the election. How much faith then can voters have that the administration is focused on, quote, thwarting election interference from any foreign powers, which is what the DHS chief says the department is doing?
Yeah, so as you said, the good news is it seems that the American people do believe the intelligence community. They are paying attention and they recognize that the Russian government is playing a hand in our elections. Now, as to whether our government is doing enough, I think the answer is no. The executive branch clearly has basically laid down its armor, starting with trying to prevent the full scope of what the Russians are doing from getting to the American people. So I think a lot of Americans are nervous. That doesn't mean that the whole election is thrown into question. It just means that they're nervous about what the Russians are doing and might do as we get closer to the elections.
Should they be very nervous about what the Russians are doing? Because it seems like the administration is focusing on the threat from China. The National Security Advisor, the Secretary of State, top officials at DHS all seem to be focusing on the threat that is posed not by Russia but by China. Mike Pompeo, in fact, called it the single greatest threat from a foreign power. How much of this rhetoric is grandstanding, electioneering? How much of it is based on actual intelligence data?
Well, what we're hearing from the president, from his cabinet officials, from those close to him who are basically politically allied with him, is a deflection, an attempt to kind of crowd Russia in the same room with China and Iran, which is not upheld by the facts. And so you hear Microsoft, it did its own assessment of interference in our elections, calling out Russia as the biggest threat. You also hear the intelligence community doing the same. And the reality is, while the Chinese and the Iranians, we even know this intuitively, they want a certain, maybe they want their narrative to win. They want to get our intelligence. But unlike Russia, they don't want chaos in the United States. They don't really care whether we're fighting one another as much as the Russians do. We have a long history now, going back to 2016 and even before that, of the Russians trying to weaken our democracy. They want America at war with itself, and they definitely want Donald Trump in the White House over Joe Biden.
But here's how the Russians reacted to these accusations against them. The Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said this. Unfortunately, this is not the first time we've heard this. I can only say once again that Russia has not interfered, does not interfere, and does not intend to interfere in anyone's internal affairs, in anyone's electoral processes. At the same time, we do not like it when others interfere in our affairs. Fair statement?
No, I mean, he's lying. And I'm sure he thinks, that the Belarusian people deciding that they want to get rid of their dictator is somehow linked to foreign interference, which it's not. And that's probably what he's alluding to. But the reality is that the Russians have been engaged in a long time, multiple year, ongoing effort. What do? They create fake bots and amplify messages that are real messages, creating racial tension, creating political tension, anything to cause us to fight one another, to get Americans discouraged about voting, because greater turnout probably will help Joe Biden, especially if it's the independents and the people who have voted in the past for Trump, but also voted for Obama. So the Russians are trying to attack us indirectly and then also they have bots on the electoral systems. Two of the state systems were penetrated. We know that now.
But is it though up to the government simply to do something about this? Facebook received a lot of criticism in 2016 for not acting, and is now slowly responding with steps to protect the elections in 2020 to fight misinformation. Earlier this month, in fact, it announced that it removed 13 Facebook accounts and some 2 pages run by the same Russian group that is believed to have interfered in 2016. What is their responsibility to act?
Well, Ghida, they have a great responsibility. Facebook failed us hugely in 2016 and still has not made up the ground that it needs to make up. Twitter has been a little bit better. But ultimately, let's face it, the American people elect and pay members of Congress and the executive branch to protect our democracy, to maintain legitimacy, to protect us against foreign interference. So yes, those companies should also be responsible citizens and caretakers, but ultimately it's up to the U.S. government, both branches.
Evelyn, Farkas, great to have you on the program. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks.
Now, it isn't just major foreign governments that are accused of trying to meddle in the upcoming presidential and congressional elections here in the U.S. Some foreign organizations have also long been suspected of trying to influence the outcome of the votes. Diaspora communities in the U.S. can play an influential role as they rally around political candidates and donate to their campaigns. Americans of Indian origin are the fastest growing ethnic group in the U.S. and could be a significant voting bloc in some key swing states this year. Joe Biden's pick for vice president, Senator Kamala Harris, whose mother immigrated from India to the U.S., could further energize this group. According to the Asian American Voter Survey, over 50% of Asian Americans say they support Democratic nominee Joe Biden. 29% say they will vote for President Trump, and 16% remain undecided. In 2016, Indian Americans raised over $10 million for the Democratic ticket, but with President Trump's strong support for Prime Minister Narendra Modi, could nationalist interest in both countries sway Indian diaspora voters here in the U.S.? The World Hindu Council, or Vishwa Hindu Parishad of America, VHPA, is an offshoot of the RSS, a Hindu organization founded almost a century ago and deeply rooted in Hindutva, an ideology that seeks to establish Hindu hegemony. The VHPA's stated goal is to promote the interests of Hindus in America. Joining me now is Ajay Shah, the Executive Vice President of the VHPA. Ajay Shah, there are almost 2 million Indian American voters. 500,000 live in battleground states like Michigan, like Pennsylvania, Arizona, Georgia, even Texas and Florida. Yeah. Now, most of them identify as Democrats and say they will likely vote for Biden and other Democratic candidates in the elections in November. Most voted for Hillary Clinton in 2016. But are Indian Americans a homogenous group, or do you expect many will vote for Trump this time, given his strong support for Prime Minister Modi and the ruling BJP party in India?
Hindu Americans are not a monolithic society, right? So there are 1 billion plus Hindus in the world, and they come in all political stripes and they come in all political ideologies. And you can imagine that living in America, the bread and butter American issues are really important for Hindus. So I don't expect the Hindu Americans to be a monolithic group. There are, however, issues that would distinguish both domestic issues and international issues that are of impact to Hindus and Indians that may be deciding factors.
Like what? Because some say that the BJP is strategically using its diaspora diplomacy with groups like the VHP, which is part of a network of Hindu nationalist organizations that was founded by the RSS back in the 60s to woo India's overseas community in support of its right-wing agenda. Now, your organization's stated mission includes promoting unity among Hindus and representing Hindu interests. So where do you stand when it comes to advancing the interests of the Hindu community here in America in a way that aligns with the VHP's Hindu nationalist goals?
So we are not a part of VHP in India. We are an American 501c3 organization, which is an American non-profit organization. We take no political stand, and we do issue-based advocacy, and all the issues are related to Hindus, mostly in America, some international Hindu issues. But just to clarify a few things.
Well, wait, hold on. But you say, though, that you're not part of the same organization, but you are part of the same umbrella organization.
We do not,
though you say you're distinct and independent from the VJP in India, your website, Mr. Shah, your website says that you are quote, inspired by the same values and ideals. So this is
inspired
the
by
same. This is the same VHP party in India that is believed to have spearheaded the Ram Temple construction. That is the construction of a temple in place of a mosque that was destroyed in 1992 by a right-wing Hindu mob.
So
The CIA,
let me
in
go
fact,
back.
in 2018 classified the VHP as a
Yeah,
religious militant organization. So to what extent are you part of the same entity?
So we are not part of the same organization. When we said that we are inspired by the same philosophy, what we mean by that is that there are certain Hindu, universal principles that Hindus believe in. Some of these principles are like Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, that is the entire universe is one family. Ekam Sita Vipra Bahuda Vadanti, which means that there are many paths to achieving God, and so these are the common Hindu principles that we all adhere to, that we all believe in, and that is the common inspiration. So when VHP was founded in 1964 by a lot of different Hindu religious saints, they came together and said, let's form this collection of Hindu organizations around the world that adhere to these central core Hindu beliefs. But each organization is independent. Each organization functions in its own country, and
But again, you say it's independent, but your own website says that you are inspired by the VHP overseas, by their own ideals. In 2018, the CIA classified the VHP as, quote, a religious militant organization under the category of political pressure groups. So let me ask you, here in the United States,
not in America.
Let me ask you about the VHPA, though, here in the United States.
How much is not classified by CIA as a militant organization?
How much? Sure, but how much coordination is there between
there is no coordination.
The VHPA and the RSS in trying to influence the campaigns of U.S. presidential or congressional candidates to promote Hindu nationalist policies?
There is no Hindu nationalist policy to promote in America. We have a set of core Hindu issues. And if you look at our website, hindupact.org, you can see clearly the questionnaires that we have prepared for the political candidates, and we have clearly articulated the issues that are of importance to American Hindus, and that's what we adhere to. So these are the principles like protection of mandirs in America, the protection of the places of worship, the equality, fight against Hindu phobia that exists in America. So these are the core principles that we have asked the presidential and congressional candidates to opine on. So we are not promoting any Hindutva issue that is outside. The Hindutva is.
Well, let me put this to you then. As you know, there are several articles that have been published by The Intercept and other news outlets documenting the ties between a former U.S. presidential candidate and Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard, who's often referred to as the first Hindu in Congress, and the RSS and its affiliates here in the U.S., including your own organization. Here's what a South Asia analyst said. He documented those ties and her ties to Modi and American Hindu nationalists. He says U.S. affiliates of the RSS, a fascist paramilitary in India, financed the rise of Tulsi Gabbard in exchange for her help rehabilitating Modi's tarnished reputation. Now, the article published in the independent media outlet The Caravan elicited the reaction of Congressman Ro Khanna, one of just a handful of Indian Americans in the U.S. Congress, and this was his response. He said, "It is the duty of every American politician of Hindu faith to stand for pluralism, reject Hindutva, and speak for equal rights for Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, Buddhists, and Christians." How do you respond to that?
So first of all, I think that a lot of articles that you refer to have to do with Hindu phobia. These are the people who do not want the universal Hindu ideology to be practiced and professed by people in America. Congressman Khanna is a politician. Congressman Khanna is Hindu by name, certainly, but Congressman Khanna is going out after certain vote bank that he thinks will make him more more popular among the people who have not voted for him in past. So Congressman Khanna is an example of a person who is a classic politician, and he will go where the vote bank is and where the money is. Congressman Khanna, we do not consider Congressman Khanna to be a torchbearer for Indian or the Hindu community.
Ajay Shah of the World Hindu Council of America, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now, concerns over foreign interference in US elections is hardly new, with the framers of the Constitution warning of, quote, the desire of foreign powers to gain an improper ascendant in our councils, end quote. At the time, it was the influence of the two superpowers of the day, Great Britain and France, that was most feared. George Washington, the first US president, warned Americans in his farewell address in 1796 about that risk, describing it as, quote, one of the most baneful foes of Republican government. He advised the American people back then to be constantly awake to the risk of foreign interference. When the US itself became a superpower, it too couldn't resist the temptation to forge the political future of other nations through covert meddling, coups d'etats, and military invasions, which became central to Cold War rivalries. Today, in the era of cyberspace and social media, foreign interference in elections is more subtle, but equally pernicious and no less dangerous. It is also cheaper and within the reach of non-state actors. And while the US inches closer to 200,000 COVID-19 deaths, the Trump campaign seeks to deflect attention from this crisis to electoral foreign interference, real or not, from its main rival, China. So in short, while Beijing has a keen interest in the outcome of the US election, so too have scores of others, adversaries and allies alike, and some may do more than just watch. That's all for this week. Send us your thoughts and comments from me and the entire team here in Washington. Until next time, thanks for watching.